When a billionaire father witnessed a humble waitress letting his disabled son lead a dance, what happened next changed their lives forever and left an entire town in tears. Gregory Langston was a man everyone in the business world recognized. His name was often printed in magazines, his face sometimes appeared on television, and his bank account was the kind that only a few people in the world could imagine. He was a billionaire, the founder and CEO of a global investment company, and one of the sharpest minds in the corporate world. He lived in a mansion the size of a small palace, owned private jets, and wore suits that cost more than most people's rent for a whole year, but none of that made him happy. Most people thought Gregory had everything, but those who truly knew him, man, there were very few understood that he carried something heavy in his heart. Behind his sharp jawline and cold, serious eyes, there was a quiet sadness. It wasn't about money, power, or business stress. It was about his 9-year-old son, Aiden. Aiden was born with cerebral palsy, a condition that made it difficult for him to control his muscles. He couldn't walk, talk, or feed himself without help. He needed a wheelchair and constant care. Most of the time, he would communicate through his eyes, small hand movements, or special devices. But to Gregory, even the smallest smile or twitch of his fingers felt like a miracle. Gregory adored Aiden more than anyone else in the world. His love for his son was the only thing stronger than his need to control every detail in his business. Every day he would sit with Aiden, talk to him, read him stories, and sometimes just hold his hand in silence. He tried everything: hiring the best doctors, traveling to different countries for therapies, buying machines that promised small improvements. But still, Aiden's condition remained the same. He often asked himself, "Why can I solve billion-dollar problems but not this?" 1. Gregory wasn't angry with Aiden's condition, but he felt helpless. He would trade all his money and power if he could just hear his son say, "Dad," even once. But that moment never came. It made him feel powerless, something he was not used to. In the business world, he controlled everything. At home, with Aiden, he had to surrender. Aiden's mother, Gregory's wife, had passed away 4 years earlier in a car accident. Since then, Gregory became even more protective. I had turned cold toward the world, keeping his personal life away from the media. He hired private nurses, special teachers, and therapists. He never allowed strangers near Aiden, but he also rarely took him out. Crowds made Gregory uncomfortable. People's stares, their pity, or their awkward silence. He hated all of it. He preferred to keep Aiden in the comfort of their home, where he could control the environment. But on one particular Friday evening, something inside Gregory told him to do something different. He was on a short business trip to a small town, away from his usual busy cities. He had finished his meetings early, and Aiden was traveling with him, as always. The hotel was too quiet, too sterile. Gregory thought maybe they could go out for dinner, just the two of them, somewhere normal, somewhere human. He searched for a nearby restaurant, not a fancy one, just a simple place where they could have a meal together. He found a local diner about 15 minutes away. It had good reviews and looked peaceful in the pictures. So, with 2 bodyguards staying nearby, but not inside, Gregory wheeled Aiden into the small-town diner, hoping for an evening that was calm, not dramatic. It was almost sunset. The sky outside was turning orange and pink, casting a soft light on everything. Inside the diner, there were about 10 tables, soft music playing from a jukebox, and the smell of grilled food filled the air. People glanced at them when they entered, mostly curious. Some recognized Gregory. Others were more focused on Aiden's wheelchair. Gregory had become used to the stares, but they still bothered him. He moved quietly to a corner table and sat down, placing Aiden beside him. That's when the waitress walked over. She had a bright, genuine smile and her name tag. Read Emily. She looked to be in her 20s, with brown hair tied in a loose ponytail and a kind expression that didn't look forced. Instead of speaking to Gregory first, Emily crouched down and smiled at Aiden. "Hi there," she said softly. "What's your name?" Gregory blinked. Most people didn't talk to Aiden first. In fact, most people didn't talk to Aiden at all. Emily waited, Not rushing, just gently smiling. Gregory leaned over. "This is Aiden," he said. "He's nonverbal, but he understands everything." Emily nodded. "Hi, Aiden. I'm Emily. I'll be your waitress today. I've got the best milkshakes in town, just saying." Aiden's hand twitched slightly, and Gregory noticed the sparkle in his son's eyes. It was small, but it was there. Emily took their order with patience. She didn't ask Gregory about Aiden's condition. She didn't speak louder as if he couldn't hear. She just treated him like a child, like a person. That meant everything. As they waited for the food, McKinley came back with crayons and a paper menu, which had a small coloring section. She gently placed the crayon in Aiden's hand, then folded a napkin into a bird shape and made it fly across the table. Aiden laughed, a quiet sound that was more like a gasp of air. But Gregory recognized it. "He likes birds," Gregory said, surprised. "Good," Emily replied. "I'll make him an army of them." She wasn't pretending to care. Could tell. She genuinely enjoyed making Aiden smile when she brought their food. She made sure Aiden's plate was placed where he could see it well. She even moved a vase slightly so it wouldn't block his view. It was small, almost invisible to anyone else. But Gregory noticed everything. While they ate, a slow, gentle song started playing from the jukebox. The tune was soft and emotional, the kind of music you wouldn't expect in a diner. Emily returned to refill their drinks. She looked at Aiden, then at the music. "Do you like dancing, Aiden?" she asked. Gregory almost said he can't, but stopped himself. Emily didn't wait for permission. She bent slightly and offered her hand. "Would you like to lead a dance?" she whispered to Aiden. His fingers moved barely, but enough. She gently placed her hand in his, and with her other hand, she held the side of his wheelchair. Then she started swaying slowly, as if they were dancing together, Aiden leading the rhythm with every tiny movement he made. To anyone watching, it might have looked like a simple gesture, but to Gregory, it was everything. Aiden was dancing, you're in his way. His moment, his choice. Gregory felt his throat tightened. He hadn't cried in years, not at funerals, not at hospital visits, not even when he watched his wife's casket lower into the ground. But now, in a quiet diner with a jukebox playing and a waitress dancing with his disabled son, his eyes filled. With tears, other people in the diner stopped eating and watched silently. No one made a sound. No one interrupted. It was as if time had paused to witness this beautiful, quiet moment. Emily didn't act like it was something amazing. She didn't look around for praise. She was completely focused on Aiden laughing, softly matching his tiny movements, treating him as the lead of a graceful dance only they could understand. Gregory couldn't speak. He couldn't even move. He just watched as his son, for the first time in a very long time, looked like he felt free. Seen, respected. Not as a patient, not as a child with a condition, but as someone who could lead a dance, even if only with a twitch of his fingers. When the music ended, Emily smiled and whispered, "That was perfect." Aiden looked at her as if he wanted to say thank you. Maybe he did in his own way. She didn't expect applause, and she didn't get it. Just silence, respect, and in Gregory's heart, a feeling he hadn't felt in years, hope the rest of. The meal passed quietly. Emily continued to serve them with the same kindness, not once treating Aiden differently, and not once making Gregory feel like a billionaire or a broken father. She simply saw them as people. When they finished, Gregory called her over and said, "Thank you." She smiled. For what? He looked at his son, then back at her, for dancing with him. Emily's reply was soft. "He reminded me of someone I once loved." That one sentence would stay with Gregory for a long time. They left the diner. Quietly, Gregory pushed Aiden's wheelchair slowly, but his heart was racing. Something had changed in that small diner. Something beautiful. He didn't know it yet, but that moment, those few minutes of a waitress letting his disabled son lead a dance was going to change not only their lives, but hers as well. And it was only the beginning. The next day, Gregory Langston couldn't stop thinking about the waitress from the small-town diner. Emily, her name echoed in his thoughts, like a soft song that wouldn't leave his mind. There was something about her, something simple yet rare. She had seen his son not as someone to be pitied, not as a burden or a helpless child, but as someone who could lead a dance. That tiny gesture, so natural for her, had left a powerful mark on Gregory's heart. Gregory had spent most of his adult life making decisions that affected hundreds of people. He was used to contracts, investments, power deals, and financial predictions. Emotions didn't belong in his boardrooms. But after that evening, his heart felt full, and it was uncomfortable. In the best way possible. It wasn't business. It was something else, something human. He had stayed the night in a hotel nearby with Aiden, just like always. But for the first time in years, he found himself pacing near the window, unable to sleep. He kept replaying. The moment when Aiden's fingers had twitched to the rhythm of the music, the joy on his son's face had been unforgettable. And it wasn't something he could buy or build. It came from kindness, from connection, from a stranger. Gregory decided that morning that he would take Aiden to the same diner again, he told himself it was just for breakfast. But deep down, he wanted to see Emily again. He wanted to understand who she was and how someone like her had entered their lives so gently, yet made such a big impact. They arrived at the diner a little earlier than before. The sun was still rising, casting long golden shadows across the small town. The diner was quieter in the morning, and when they walked in, only a few people sat at the tables, sipping coffee and reading newspapers. Emily was there. She was wiping down a table when she noticed them. Her eyes lit up, and she smiled in that same genuine way that had moved Gregory the night before. "Hey, you two came back," she said, walking over. Gregory gave a small smile and nodded. "We thought we'd try your famous breakfast menu." "Well, then you're in luck," she laughed, "'cause I make the fluffiest pancakes this side of the state." Aiden made a soft sound, his version of excitement. "Emily noticed right away. You remember me?" she asked, crouching down again. Aiden blinked twice. That was his way of saying yes. Emily didn't treat it like a big deal. She just smiled and said, "Then we're already friends." Gregory watched the interaction closely. Again, she wasn't faking anything. There was no awkwardness, no discomfort. It was as if she'd known Aiden for years. They ordered pancakes, eggs, and fruit. Juice. While waiting, Emily brought over some more napkin animals. She showed Aiden how to flap their wings by pressing the table gently. Gregory finally asked the question that had been sitting in his heart since last night. "You said Aiden reminded you of someone you once loved?" said his voice low and careful. Emily paused. She looked at Aiden, then back at Gregory. "Would it be okay if I sat for a minute?" "I all set." "Of course." She slid into the booth across from them, folding her hands in front of her. "My little brother," she said, softly. "His name was Mason. He was 3 years younger than me. He had muscular dystrophy." Gregory listened silently. Aiden stared at her too, as if he understood. Mason couldn't walk or talk clearly. He had a wheelchair like Aiden's. He loved music. And he loved dancing. Of course, he couldn't really dance like other kids, but to him, movement was still magic. She smiled at the memory, her eyes misting slightly. "When I was a teenager, I used to take his hand and let him lead our dances. He'd move his fingers a little and I'd follow whatever motion he gave me. Sometimes it was fast, sometimes barely a sway. But it made him feel like he was in control of something, you know?" Gregory nodded, feeling the emotion rising again in his throat. "He passed away 2 years ago," she said, her voice cracking just a bit. "Complications. It happened suddenly. One day, he had a mild cold. The next, he was gone." There was a long silence. Only the soft clinking of dishes from the kitchen filled the air. "I'm so sorry," Gregory said, meaning every word. Emily wiped her eyes gently. "Thank you. He was my best friend. After he died, I couldn't go back to being the same. I dropped out of nursing school to take care of my mom, who wasn't handling it well. I started working jobs, this diner, a night shift at a gas station, and sometimes babysitting just to make ends meet." She gave a small laugh, as if embarrassed. "I keep telling myself I'll go back to school, but money's tight, and life moves faster than you expect." Gregory looked at her, not as a billionaire, but as a father, someone who knew grief. He thought about the thousands of people he'd met through business, high-powered executives, investors, consultants. And yet this young woman sitting across from him in a simple diner uniform had more depth, more kindness than most of them put together. "You remind me of someone too," he said. "Who?" she asked. "My wife." Emily blinked in surprise. "Really?" She had that same way of making people feel seen. Aiden loved her more than anyone. When we lost her, everything changed. He went quiet for months. Emily looked at Aiden with gentle eyes. "He's strong. I'm lucky to have you." Gregory shook his head. "No, I'm lucky to have him." Their food arrived and Emily stood up to continue her shift. But the air between them had changed. There was a quiet understanding now, a bond made not through long history but through shared loss and compassion. Gregory watched Emily the whole time they ate. She moved from table to table with ease, joking with regulars, refilling cups, smiling without effort. And every so often, she glanced at Aiden, checking if he needed anything, even if it was just another paper crane. Before they left, Gregory asked for the bill. Emily laughed. "It's on the house. It's my treat for my new dance partner." Gregory insisted on tipping her generously, but she refused. "I'm just happy you came back," she said. As they left the diner, Aiden turned his head slightly to watch Emily one last time. His hand moved slowly, almost like he was waving. She waved back with both hands and called out, "See you soon, Aiden." Gregory smiled. A real smile, not the one he used in boardrooms or media interviews, but a quiet, grateful one. He didn't know yet what he was going to do, but he knew one thing: he was not going to forget Emily. She had brought light to a place in his heart that had been dark for far too long. That evening, after putting Aiden to bed in the hotel room, Gregory sat by the window again, this time not pacing but thinking. He thought about how strange life could be, how someone you never met before could walk into your world and change it with a single gesture. He knew he had the power to help her, but he also didn't want to insult her independence. She was proud, strong. She had faced more pain than most. People twice her age and still showed up to work every day with a smile. She wasn't asking for anything, and that made Gregory want to give her everything. He called his assistant in New York and gave her instructions. "I want you to find out everything you can about Emily discreetly. Her education, her financial situation, anything public. And I want a scholarship created in the name of her brother Mason. Full ride, nursing school, books, tuition, everything. No strings attached." His assistant hesitated. "Do you want her to know it's from you?" Gregory paused. "No, not yet." As he ended the call, he felt something warm inside him. It wasn't business. It wasn't charity. It was personal. For the first time in years, it felt good to use his wealth for something that truly mattered. The next day, he returned to the diner again with Aiden, and the day after that. Emily greeted them every time like old friends. She continued to dance with Aiden, bringing joy to every visit. Gregory continued his quiet efforts in the background, preparing something that would soon change her life. But for now, he simply enjoyed the mornings, the diner, the laughter, the way Aiden's eyes lit up, the way Emily made them feel normal. It's not special or different, just a dad and a son enjoying pancakes and paper birds. And slowly, without planning it, without expecting it, Gregory's heart began to heal, all because of a waitress who let a disabled boy lead a dance. The air inside the diner that evening felt warmer than usual, like something special was about to happen. It had become a quiet routine now, Gregory and Aiden visiting for a simple meal. Emily greeting them with a soft smile, and Aiden responding with tiny movements that meant the world to his father. Even the regular customers had started to notice. They no longer stared or whispered. Instead, they smiled at Aiden, nodded politely to Gregory, and left them in peace. It was as if the diner had become a little world of its own, safe kind, and full of gentle moments. Gregory had never imagined that a place so ordinary could bring so much peace into his life. The silver cutlery, the squeaky red leather booths, the sound of the jukebox in the background, it all felt strangely comforting now, and the reason was simple. Emily had become something like a bridge between Gregory's silent world and something more human. She never acted nervous around Aiden, never hesitated to talk to him, and always treated him like any other boy. It made Gregory admire her even more each time he watched her with his son. Every visit added another layer to a bond that was forming. Without anyone saying it out loud, that evening, the diner was busier than usual. A few local families had come in. Children were laughing in a corner booth, and the air smelled of fresh burgers and French fries. Gregory and Aiden took their usual table near the window. Aiden looked especially calm, his eyes slowly moving as he observed the bright lights and the soft glow of the jukebox in the corner. Emily appeared as always, this time with two small origami animals in her hands, a rabbit and a turtle. "Hi, their dance partner," she said to Aiden. "I brought some friends with me tonight." Aiden's hand twitched twice. Gregory smiled. Yes. He liked the animals. Emily placed the paper rabbit gently on the table in front of Aiden and made it hop across the table. Aiden made a soft sound, almost like a small gasp. Gregory recognized it immediately. It was his son's version of laughter. "Dinner will be ready soon," Emily said. "But I was wondering, would you two mind if I requested a song?" Gregory raised an eyebrow, curious. "A song?" Emily nodded. "Just one?" I know it sounds silly, but it's kind of a tradition here. Every Friday night, the jukebox plays a slow tune that people sometimes dance to. It's mostly for fun." Gregory looked at his son. Adon's eyes were focused on Emily, his expression soft and alert. "I think we'd love that," Gregory said after a pause. Emily's face lit up. "Great, just give me 1 minute." She walked over to the jukebox, pressed a few buttons, and after a few seconds, a soft, melodic tune started playing. The music filled the diner like a gentle breeze. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, just calm, steady, and beautiful. It had the kind of rhythm that invited emotion, the kind of tune that made people stop and listen. Emily returned to their table. She bent down, took Aiden's hand gently, and said, "Would you like to dance again?" Aiden's fingers moved slightly. Gregory didn't say anything. He couldn't. His throat felt tight. Emily didn't wait for approval from anyone else. She placed her other hand on the back of Aiden's wheelchair and began to sway slowly. Her movements were graceful but simple, matching the rhythm of the song. She let Aiden lead again, following the smallest movement of his fingers, the direction of his eyes, even the slight tilt of his head. Other people in the diner noticed. A few paused their conversations. The group of children stopped laughing for a moment and watched quietly. The hum of the room faded into silence as all eyes turned toward the quiet dance unfolding at the side table. But Emily wasn't performing. She didn't care about the attention. Her focus was entirely on Aiden. Every tiny reaction from him, a blink, a sound, a finger twitch, was treated like a signal, and she responded with grace, matching him step for step. Even if that step was only the rocking of a chair. Gregory's eyes blurred with tears again. He tried to blink them away, but they kept coming. It was too much, the music, the way his son's face was glowing, the calm joy surrounding them. And then something unexpected happened. Aiden moved his hand upward, slowly but clearly. It wasn't just a twitch, it was a full, purposeful motion. He was reaching out. Emily gasped softly and leaned in, letting him rest his hand against her shoulder. Then he pushed his wheelchair forward just an inch, guiding the movement of the dance. Gasps filled the room. Gregory stood frozen. Adon had never done that before. Not at therapy, not at home, not even with his private doctors. This was new, completely new. It was like Aiden had found the courage, the trust, the joy in that one moment to do something more, because Emily made him feel like he could. When the song ended, the entire diner remained silent for a beat. And then, slowly, gentle applause began. No one clapped loudly. It was soft and respectful, as if everyone understood they had just witnessed something deeply personal. Emily gave Aiden a small bow and whispered, "That was the best dance yet." Aiden made a small, breathy sound, one that only Gregory would recognize as his son's version of laughter. And then something else happened. He turned to look at Gregory and held out his hand. Gregory stared at him. "You want me to dance too?" he asked almost in disbelief. Aiden blinked once. Yes, Gregory wasn't a dancer, not even at weddings. He always felt awkward. But this wasn't about style. It was about love. Slowly he stood up, walked to the side of Aiden's chair, and placed his hand in his son's. Emily stepped aside with a smile, letting them have their moment. Gregory bent down, pressed his forehead to Aiden's, and whispered, "You're amazing, kiddo." Tears rolled silently down his cheeks. For a few seconds, the two of them swayed together. A father and son. Not a billionaire and a disabled boy. It's just a parent and a child moving to music in a small diner in a small town, surrounded by strangers who had become silent witnesses to something pure and unforgettable. When the music faded out completely, Gregory straightened up, wiped his tears with the back of his hand, and took a deep breath. The diner slowly returned to normal, but the atmosphere had changed. Something had shifted. Emily brought over their food with a quiet smile. No more jokes, just soft kindness. She placed a napkin in front of Aiden and gently set the plate down. "I think he burned a few calories dancing," she whispered. Gregory gave a soft laugh. He sure did. They ate quietly, but it wasn't awkward. It was peaceful. Like everyone was still holding on to the beauty of what they'd just seen as they finished their meal. One of the elderly customers walked over a man with a cane and a cowboy hat. He nodded toward Gregory. "That was the finest dance I've seen in 60 years, he said. "You've got yourself one brave little boy." Gregory smiled and shook his hand. "Thank you." The man looked at Aiden, tipped his hat, and walked out slowly after paying for their meal. Gregory approached Emily while Aiden waited near the door. "Thank you," he said again. "I feel like I say that every time, but it never feels like—" "Enough," Emily shrugged. "You don't need to thank me. He's wonderful." Gregory hesitated, then said, "You brought something out of him that I haven't seen in years. You gave him that. And you gave me something too." Emily's eyes softened. "I just did what felt right." Gregory wanted to tell her about the scholarship, the plan, everything he was organizing behind the scenes. But he stopped himself. Not yet. The moment didn't need anything more than honesty. "I hope you know," he said, "that you're changing lives just by being you." Emily didn't know how to respond. She just smiled and nodded. Gregory walked back to Aiden, took his hand, and they left the diner as quietly as they had entered. But this time, something had changed. Not just inside the building, but inside their hearts. Back at the hotel, Gregory sat by Aiden's bed, watching him sleep. His hands still twitched a little from time to time. Gregory imagined he was dreaming. "About dancing," he whispered into the quiet room. "I saw you, buddy. I saw you take the lead. It was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." Aiden didn't respond, but Gregory knew he understood. Outside, the stars filled the sky. Inside, peace filled Gregory's chest in a way he hadn't felt in years. And it all started with a waitress who let a disabled boy believe that he could lead a dance. A simple act. A moment of kindness. But its echo would be felt for a lifetime. The days that followed felt like a quiet miracle unfolding slowly but surely. Gregory had always been a man who lived his life according to plans and schedules. But now, something inside him was changing in ways he had never expected. It wasn't just about business deals or money anymore. It was about something much more personal and important. About family, hope, and a new beginning. After that magical night in the diner when Aiden had led the dance, Gregory found himself visiting the small town more often than before. At first, it was just because he wanted to spend time with his son in a place where the world seemed gentler and slower. But it quickly became clear that the visits were about more than just that. They were about people, about Emily, about the community, and about the small sparks of kindness that had started to light up Gregory's life. Emily, for her part, was surprised at how her life was beginning to change too. She had never expected that a billionaire and his son would become such a regular part of her days. Yet the more she saw Gregory and Aiden, the more she felt a deep connection growing between them. It wasn't just sympathy or pity. It was something real, something honest. Emily's story was still heavy with pain. Every day she carried memories of her brother Mason and the struggles her family had faced. But now she also carried hope that maybe she could finish school, that maybe her dreams of becoming a nurse were not impossible, and most importantly, hope that she could be part of something bigger than herself. One afternoon, Gregory invited Emily and her mother to a small cafe nearby. It was his way of saying thank you, not just for the dances with Aiden, but for the kindness she had shown them both. The cafe was cozy and warm, filled with soft light and the smell of fresh coffee and baked bread. It was nothing like the fancy restaurants Gregory was used to. It was simple and honest. Emily's mother was quiet at first. She seemed tired but kind. They talked softly about the past, about Mason, and about the future. Gregory listened more than he spoke. He wanted them to know he cared, not just about helping, but about understanding. During the conversation, Emily told Gregory about the challenges she faced every day, how she worked double shifts to help support her family, how she struggled to find time to study, how sometimes the weight of grief and responsibility felt almost too much. Gregory felt a deep respect for her strength. Here was a young woman carrying so much on her shoulders but never giving up. He wanted to do more. Not charity that felt distant or forced, but real help that could change lives. After that meeting, G'day contacted the nursing school nearby and arranged for a full scholarship to be waiting for Emily when she was ready. Books, tuition, and even living expenses would be covered. He wanted her to have the freedom to focus on her dreams without worrying about money. When Gregory told Emily about the scholarship, she was stunned. Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment she couldn't speak. She thought about Mason and whispered his name, feeling like her brother was watching over her. "I don't know what to say," she finally said. "This means everything." Gregory smiled softly. "You deserve it. You've been strong through so much. It's time someone believed in you." Emily's life began to change. The scholarship meant she could reduce her work hours and spend more time studying. She enrolled in classes and threw herself into learning, driven by a passion to help others, just like she had wanted for years. Meanwhile, Gregory and Aiden's visits to the diner continued. Each time, the bond between the three grew deeper. Emily and Aiden became friends in their own quiet way. She learned to read his small movements better, and he seemed to respond to her presence with more comfort and joy. Gregory watched all of this with a heart full of gratitude. He saw how much Emily was helping Aiden to express himself, and how much Aiden was helping Emily to heal. It was a beautiful exchange of love and hope one day. Gregory surprised Emily with a small gift, a notebook filled with blank pages. "I want you to write down your dreams," he told her. "Write whatever you want, no matter how big or small. This is for you." Emily held the notebook close, tears streaming down her cheeks. It wasn't just a notebook. It was a symbol of a future she could now imagine. As the months passed, Emily's health and spirit grew stronger. Her classes went well, and she became involved in the community, volunteering at the local hospital to gain experience. Started teaching some of the other waitresses how to make origami animals. Spreading the joy she had shared with Aiden, Gregory noticed something else too, a new lightness in Aiden's movements. His fingers twitched more often, and sometimes when no one expected it. He would reach out to hold Gregory's hand or smile in a way that made his father's heart leap. The power of kindness, a belief, was working its quiet magic. But the journey wasn't always easy. There were days when Emily doubted herself, when the pain of losing Mason felt sharp again. There were nights when Gregory worried about the future, about Aiden's health, and about how to be the father his son needed. Yet through it all, they found strength in each other. One afternoon, Emily took Aiden outside the diner for a short walk in the warm sun. She pushed his wheelchair gently down the sidewalk, talking softly to him. Pointing out flowers and birds, Gregory watched from a distance, feeling tears in his eyes. He realized that for the first time, he was seeing a world for Aiden that was full of possibilities. Later that evening, Gregory sat with Emily and said something he had been thinking about for a long time. "You've changed all of us," he said. "Aiden, me, ... You brought us back to life in a way. Emily smiled. We helped each other. Gregory nodded. But I want to do more. I want to create something that lasts. A foundation to help children like Aiden and families like yours. Emily looked surprised but hopeful. Together, they began to plan a project, a program to provide support, therapy, and education for disabled children and their families in small towns. A place where kindness would be the foundation. Just like in the diner, Gregory poured his resources into the foundation, but Emily became its heart. She spoke at community events, shared her story, and worked tirelessly to raise awareness. The foundation quickly gained attention, not because of the money behind it, but because of the genuine care and understanding it offered. As the project grew, so did the bond between Gregory, Emily, and Aiden. They became a team, a family, not bound by blood, but by love and purpose. One evening, years later, at the opening ceremony of the new community center funded by the foundation, Gregory stood quietly, watching Emily dance with Aiden again. This time, the dance was on a small stage, the children and families cheering around them. Aiden's face was radiant with joy, his movements stronger and more confident than ever. Gregory's heart swelled with pride. He knew that all the money, all the success in the world was nothing compared to this moment. The moment when kindness met courage. When a waitress let a disabled boy lead a dance, and when a billionaire decided to listen, their lives had intertwined in ways none of them could have imagined. And together, they had created something beautiful. A story of hope, love, and the power of believing in each other. And it all began with a simple dance in a small diner where a boy was given the chance to lead. Time moved gently forward, carrying with it a wave of changes that none of them had expected, but all had hoped for. The small community center that Gregory and Emily had worked so hard to create had become more than just a building. It was now a home for hope, healing, and new beginnings. Families from nearby towns came to visit, seeking support and encouragement. Children who once felt isolated found friends who understood them. And through it all, Aiden's story was a light that inspired everyone who came through the doors. Gregory watched all this with a deep sense of fulfillment. The man who once believed that money could solve everything had learned something far more valuable, that true wealth was found in connection, kindness, and shared dreams. The foundation wasn't just about therapy or education. It was about reminding people that they mattered and that their lives could be full of joy. Even in the face of challenges, Emily had blossomed into a leader. No longer just a waitress or a student, she had become the heart and soul of the foundation's work. She spoke at events, helped design programs, and most importantly, listened to the families who came for help. Her own experience gave her a unique strength of compassion, born from understanding pain and struggle firsthand. And that made her the perfect person to guide others toward hope. Aiden's progress continued in ways that amazed even the doctors. Small movements became stronger. Quiet sounds turned into words. He still needed care and support every day, but his spirit was unbreakable. Watching him dance at the center's events, laughing and leading with confidence, brought tears to Gregory's eyes more times than he could count. One day, a local news reporter came to the community center to interview Gregory, Emily, and Aiden. She wanted to share their story with the world, to show how kindness and determination could change lives. The interview was emotional, filled with smiles and tears. Gregory spoke about how his perspective had shifted from wealth to love. Emily talked about dreams and the power of community. Aiden, as always, shone quietly, showing the courage that inspired them all. The story quickly spread beyond their town. Letters, calls, and donations arrived from strangers touched by their journey. People shared their own stories of struggle and hope, creating a ripple effect of kindness far beyond what anyone had imagined. But even as the foundation grew, Gregory never forgot the simple moments that had started it all. The diner, the dance, the small acts of bravery that had changed his son's life. He often took Aiden there, sitting in their usual booth, remembering how everything had begun. One evening, after a quiet meal, Emily joined them. The three of them sat together, feeling like a family in a way that went beyond words. Emily held Aiden's hand gently, and Gregory smiled, knowing that their lives were forever linked. You know, Emily said softly, it wasn't just about dancing. It was about believing in each other and hope. Gregory nodded, and that belief made all the difference. Aiden looked up at them, his eyes bright. He reached out and touched Emily's cheek, a small gesture that spoke volumes. In that moment, they all understood something profound. Love, kindness, and trust could transform even the hardest journeys into beautiful stories. As the years passed, the foundation expanded to help children and families across the country. Gregory dedicated himself fully to the cause, using his influence to raise awareness and bring resources to those in need. Emily continued her studies, becoming a nurse who specialized in working with disabled children. Bringing her journey full circle, Aiden grew stronger, and though life would always have its challenges, he lived with a joy that inspired everyone around him. He never forgot the night he led that dance. The moment when a waitress had given him the chance to shine, Gregory often reflected on that night. How a small act of kindness had opened doors, not just for Aiden, but for everyone who crossed their path. It reminded him that sometimes the simplest gestures could change the course of a lifetime. One day, at a gala event celebrating the foundation's success, Gregory stood before a crowd of supporters and told the story once again. He spoke about Emily's courage, Aiden's strength, and the waitress who had started it all with a gentle invitation to dance. As he finished, the room erupted in applause. Tears glistened on many faces, and Gregory felt a deep gratitude for the journey they had shared later that night as the event wound down. Gregory found Emily and Aiden standing by the dance floor. The music began to play softly, and Emily extended her hand to Aiden once more. Without hesitation, Aiden took it. Together they moved slowly, their dance a symbol of hope, love, and the incredible power of believing in one another. Gregory watched them, his heart full. He knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, this moment and all the moments like it would carry them through. Because sometimes it only takes one step, one dance, one act of kindness to change everything. And that was the greatest story of all.